man with the big mustache came in, handed out our itineraries for the next 5 weeks. Remember, every morning you will be tested on what you learned the day before, and you are always being observed. Any infraction of the rules, wearing a uniform incorrectly, coming in after curfew, having a drink at the motel bar, will be grounds for immediate dismissal. And so it began. So much to learn. We had to learn all Pan Am flight routes. We had to learn exactly where Pan Am flew, geography. Pan Am flew to 80 cities. We could show a Shanghai, or Vienna, or Singapore, Tahiti. We had to know them all. We had to know each airplane model, its fuel range, its capacity, where the fire extinguishers were. Just for fun, it was completely different on each model. We had to know how to stir up a perfect cocktail. We had to know how to put out a galley fire, how to deliver a baby, how to inflate a life raft, how to evacuate a 707 in 90 seconds. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. And every 3 or 4 days, a young woman would disappear. Pan Am's policy was to dismiss a trainee with no one knowing. It would just be, Linda, could you step out in the hallway? And poof. When you got back to the motel, her belongings were gone, and she was too. It was exceedingly nerve-wracking. They drilled us in etiquette. Chin up, shoulders back, the etiquette instructor said. Imagine a wire running from the top of your head, holding your chin up. We practiced walking with books balanced on top of our heads. We had to know proper addresses. Betty, could you demonstrate the proper address for a United States ambassador? Welcome aboard, Your Excellency. How about a United States senator? Welcome aboard, Senator Jones. And Rabbi? Welcome aboard, Rabbi Rabinowitz. They trained us to sit with our legs crossed at the ankles, never at the knees, and never jiggle or strut when you're walking. There was to be no wiggling at Pan Am. Grooming was wrong. Correctable, but wrong. Hours of grooming. We all had to wear the same lipstick, a shade called Ellen. To be honest with you, some girls looked like corpses in it. But you needed special written permission to wear anything else. Well, any passenger could be difficult. We knew to keep an eye out for married men. Some men would their wedding ring before climbing on board, so we would look for that telltale white line where their wedding band had been. One time, my friend Zoe, she had a passenger, very important, pompous passenger in first class who'd had a bit too much to drink. He puffed himself up and he said to her, "Do you know who I am?" She immediately popped into the galley and she said, "Ladies, we have a passenger in 2A who does not know who he is. Can any of you maybe identify him?" National Airlines in the 70s had a campaign that went, "I'm Cheryl, fly me." Continental had an ad campaign that said, "At Continental, we really move our tails for you." I remember the first time I saw Southwest stewardesses wearing hot pants and go-go boots. I understand the marketing, and I wasn't a prude, but it wasn't for us. It wasn't for Pan Am. We wanted to be taken seriously. We needed to be taken seriously. We wanted to look good, we were programmed to look good, but we were not flying Playboy bunnies. We were there for safety. And safety was important, especially with turmoil in the world in the 60s, especially in Vietnam. Even as the war in Vietnam kept ramping up and ramping up, Pan Am kept flying flights in and out, flying the soldiers off on R&R trips, bringing soldiers home, bringing soldiers over for the war. In 1965, an Air France stewardess as she opened up the air landing on Son Nhut Airport in Saigon. It sent shockwaves through the industry. Pan Am ramped up its safety measures. Pilots were instructed to fly at altitude as long as possible before dropping very sharply and very suddenly in for landing. It was stomach-lurching. We had to make sure everyone was strapped in tightly. Once, after we landed in Saigon, the flight engineer asked me to come outside. He had finished his walk around of the plane. He pointed to one of the engines. "What is it?" I said. "Bullet holes. 4 of them on the underside of one of the 4 engines. Probably a rifle. Never could have taken down a plane." I was shocked. They got that plane covered up the holes, get that plane patched, and get it out of there as quickly and safely as possible. But the worst part for us was seeing the boys at the airport, saying goodbye to their families. They were teary-eyed like the little kids they were. Do you know the average age of an American soldier in Vietnam? 19 years old. We thought we were doing our country a service. We were doing our bit to help the war. Nearly every Pan Am stewardess who was stationed in San Francisco or Los Angeles worked on those flights in and out of Vietnam. We were one of the largest contingents of civilians working during the war. The boys on my planes, they never would have been the ones burning villages or shooting babies. The boys on my planes, all the boys that I saw, were honorable and respectable. Right? War is hell. The only thing I can say for sure is we got to know the world better. That's the thing about working as a stewardess. You get to know humanity better. You really get to know people better. I became a stewardess because I was in love with flying, and I've never lost that sense of wonder. I'm still fascinated by the sights of twinkling lights from cities below and all those stars up above. Sometimes I'll look up and I'll see a plane and I'll think, I wonder where they're going. Because it could be anywhere in the world, right? Even a jet trail makes me nostalgic. Being on an airplane in the 1960s, it was like being a guest at a very exclusive party. It was a real honor to be there. So to all of you, anyone who flew Pan Am in the 1960s, all I have to say is, thank you so much for flying your Pan Am Clipper. A stewardess. But is there anyone in this room who ever worked as a stewardess for any airline? Anyone here right now? There you go. So if I made any mistakes, let me know, or let everybody here know. There you go. No, I'm a historian, really. And this is the first composite character I've done. I do portrayals of individual women like Eleanor Roosevelt, and I do Amelia Earhart and Jackie Kennedy and Julia Child. But this is the first time I've done not one character, but it's sort of like, I feel like it's kind of like Rosie the Riveter. Like the story of the stewardesses is a composite as much as stories are all real stories, but I sort of put them together. So, yeah.
In your research, did you ever interview any of the stewardesses?
Did I ever interview stewardesses? I did, yes. And Yes, from the 60s and the 70s. I met a couple from the 80s, but very much so. And it's interesting because every stewardess experience is different, but it's remarkable the things that so many stewardesses remember so vividly. And very often the things that will stand out are the glamour of it, that it really was. There was one quote from a woman, and she said, I want to tell you that it wasn't glamorous, but really, it was fantastic, you know. And a lot of them will talk about the other options. And you know, anyone who was growing up in the 50s or 60s, you can remember that for young women who wanted or needed to work, if you were middle class, the options were limited. You know, you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a secretary, or you could be a stewardess. Now, if you were adventurous, which one of those jobs would you pursue? You know, it was so glamorous. So, yeah.
What the cost of a ticket?
I had the same question. Wait. I had to write it down because it's really remarkable compared to today. In the days of regulation, pre-1978, the United States government set routes and airfares, and they still, to some extent, control routes. But they set the airfare, so airlines could not compete on price at all. They had to compete on other things, and service, and you know, young, sexy stewardesses. Let's see. To give you a sense, a ticket on TWA, 1955. One-way Chicago to Phoenix was $138. I'm sorry, not one-way, round trip, $138. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $1,200, Chicago to Phoenix. Now, jets led to lower fares. In 1965, the cheapest coach class flight from New York to London cost the equivalent of about $1,800, and that's in 1965. The average round trip New York to London in 1960 was $3,500. I mean, that's a lot of money in 1960 dollars, a lot of money. It was very much something that was for the wealthy. I mean, maybe as a once-in-a-lifetime thing, you could fly to Europe, but it's not something that average people did. That changed over time. And by the 70s, especially with the 747, because the 747 was so big, the airfares start coming down, and then deregulation really brought them down. So everyone, you know, we talk about, oh, wouldn't it be great to go back to caviar and champagne on planes? But the reality is you'd have to pay for it, and most people wouldn't want to give up, you know, low fares in exchange for that. It's a tough one. Yeah. Oh, thank you. The question is the hat authentic? It is authentic. However, I will tell you, it doesn't really fit me that well. The uniform and the hat are from the 1969 to 1971 Pan Am stewardess look. This was a really good day on Etsy when I found this, because it fits me, which is remarkable. They introduced this look, it was by Evan Picone, for the coming of the 747. 747s entered service in January 1970. And the bowler hat was designed to be worn at a kind of jaunty angle, you know, kind of perched on your head. I think the color is space age blue. These uniforms, and the reason I say it was a good day on Etsy is because not only does it fit me, but I could afford it. Pan Am items are highly collectible. And the other thing I've got is a Pan Am pin, and I don't want to tell my husband what I spent on this. The stewardess wings were solid gold, and they are really treasured today. So if anyone has one, don't throw it out. You know? But isn't that kind of a nice testimony to what this airline meant? And by the way, if